Hi everyone, it's Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be making a couple backgrounds using the Karin markers with the March My Monthly Hero kit from Hero Arts. I'm going to start off by creating a couple backgrounds. These are some colors that I had in mind. I'm using the Karin markers, and the colors that I'm using are Plum 197, Egyptian Blue 305, Turquoise 654, and Cool Aqua 204. So I'm starting off with a piece of the Fabriano Artistico cold press watercolor paper, and this is the extra white. I taped that down to my surface, and then I'm just scribbling on these colors going from lightest to darkest. Doesn't matter what order, if you're going dark to light or light to dark. I'm just scribbling on these colors. Then I spritzed it with water, and I'm just taking my Royal Langnickel Zen water brush here. It's not a water brush, just a paintbrush, and I'm just spreading that out, so kind of evening out those colors. And then I'm going to come in for a second layer. So I did heat set that a little bit so I could add in more color here to help blend that better. So once again, just adding it. I'm not being as particular on the second round if all of the white space is covered. Once I put that second layer down, I'll spritz it again with water, and then just taking my flat brush, which is wet, and just going over that to help blend that. Now I know it doesn't look quite blended right now, but once it is completely dry, you'll see it does look quite blended. So just kind of finishing off, spreading those colors out just a little bit more, trying to get that to be a nice smooth blend. And then once I'm happy with that, I'll just heat set that a little bit so I can take my painter's tape off, and I'll set it off on the side to dry while I work on my second background. So you can see it's flimsy, so it's still pretty wet. Now for my second background, I got a little smart and remembered that I had a wooden board here I could tape this down to. Now this one, I'm going for a soft pink background. I'm using Rose Pink 168, Skin 2, number 201, and Skin 1, number 200. And once again, just scribbling on these colors. So these are really, really vibrant colors, these Karin markers, which is what I really love about them. I do some watercoloring with them, and I really wanted to try backgrounds with this. So I'm really liking how this light pink turned out. And actually, because I know if I put another layer down, it's going to get really vibrant, and I didn't want it to be too bright, I'm just going to do the one layer on this one. So once I kind of heat set that, looked at it for a second, and thought, I'm just going to leave it as is. It was just a beautiful blend, and I actually liked how it was kind of splotchy in some areas. I thought that was more realistic to the sky background that I wanted. So then I will set this one off on the side to dry as well. Now what I had done off screen is I had taken both of those pieces once they were completely dry, and I ran them through a die cutting machine just to flatten it. I didn't put anything over it except a piece of paper, but that helped me flatten these out when they were dry. Now I'm going to add some of these metallic shimmer inks from Hero Arts. I'm just putting a couple little spots down of the gold and the white metallic ink, and I'm going to just add a little bit of water to each, and I'll flick these onto my background to create some stars. So this is going to be a real starry nighttime sky for my background. And I'll go ahead and flick on some of the gold metallic ink as well. So just kind of watering it down helps give me some good flicks, and I kind of held my hand back little ways, which helped get me some finer spots. They weren't so thick. So I'll set that off on the side to dry, and I'll work on my background for the pink one that I had done. So I'm just working with my backgrounds first, and I'll put these both together towards the end of the video. Now for this one, I'm using the new Waves and Cloud background stamp. I thought this was a gorgeous design and would look really nice just to add a little interest. So I'm trying something new. I removed the foam in my Misty, which is the new black Misty that I just love the look of this. I picked the background stamp up at the door of my Misty, adding just a couple pieces of adhesive to the back of my watercolor paper. I set that on top of the stamp and then flipped it over, and you can see then my paper is perfectly placed in my Misty. So then I'm prepping that with an anti-static powder tool since I'm going to be doing a little bit of heat embossing. And I'm inking that up with the Hero Arts Clear Embossing ink. And then I'll close the door of my Mindy, give that some good pressure. And I actually stamped this twice with the clear ink because this is textured paper since this is a watercolor paper. And I want to make sure I have good coverage of this ink all over that background. And like I said, this is just to add a little bit of interest. I didn't expect it to be very in your face. It was just to add a little bit to the cardstock. So then once I have that stamped down, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle on some of the Sparkle embossing powder, which is just one of my all-time favorite embossing powders. It adds just enough interest to the card with a little bit of sparkle to it. So definitely my favorite. And then I'm coming in and I'll heat set that with my heat tool, and I'll give you a closer look here on what that looks on my background. So you can see just a little bit there. On the card itself, you can really see it in person, but it's kind of hard to catch it all in camera. Now on to some stamping. This is the My Monthly Hero Kit from March 2020. And I know that this is sold out, unfortunately, but there are other layering stamp sets that you can use. I love the Heroscapes that Hero Arts has. So this is pretty much the same thing, just a different image. So you could use any one of those. The first layer I need to do my lightest color in. So I will be using lime green is my light color, and fresh lawn I'll come in later. So I'm actually going to stamp this out a few times. Whenever I work with layering stamp sets, I like to stamp them multiple times in case one didn't turn out very well. And if they do turn out great, then I have them for future cards. Now you can see this one didn't quite stamp all the way down, and I didn't want to stamp it again. I didn't want it to be too bright, but it's fine because the layering stamp set is going to kind of mask that or kind of hide those imperfections. So once I get all of these done, stamped in that lime green ink, I'll bring in the second layer of the stamp, and this is what's going to add some texture look to this. I'll pick that up with the door of the Mindy, and I will ink that with the Fresh Lawn ink. And I'll repeat this on all four of them that I had stamped out. Once my grass areas are all stamped out, I'll set them off on the side, and I'm going to work on my tree. Now this is where I had a lot of fun. The tree, I actually kind of changed up some colors, which I was glad I did because I switched my mind on one of them. So this is the first layer. It's this most solid one. And my first thought was to go with the pink because a lot of the examples I saw use the pinks I thought were beautiful. So I did start that. I'm using Cotton Candy and Rose Madder for the pinks. So my lightest layer here is the Cotton Candy. And I am stamping on Hero Arts Dove White Cardstock, I believe it's called. So I stamped the pink one twice. And then I cleaned my stamp set off. And now I'm going to stamp one in the Creamsicle Reactive ink. I didn't have a regular orange out of the Hero Arts ink line, so I'm just using the Reactive ink. I did stamp that twice. Then I'll clean that off, flip my cardstock around so I can stamp another one, and this one's going to be in Pool Party, and that's also out of the Reactive ink line, and that turned out really, really nice. So now I'm going back to my pink set, and I'm coming in with that second layer. There's only 2 layers for these. And I'm stamping that in the Rose Madder. So just loving the textured look of that and how realistic it looks. And like I said, kind of hides any little imperfections. Now for the orange tree, I'm coming in with Fruit Punch Reactive ink. And I was really excited how that turned out. I wasn't actually sure if that would look very good, but definitely loved how that came out. And then my next one, I cleaned off the stamp and I came in with Blue Raspberry Reactive ink and stamped that twice just to kind of make that pop a little bit more. Now for the tree, I'm just going to stamp these in an acrylic block. It was just a lot faster, and I'm using Sandstone. This is actually a mini ink cube I had gotten out of a previous My Monthly Hero kit, so I just really liked that soft brown. Then I can take the coordinating dies, line those up with each of the images. I'm going to hold them in place with purple tape and run those all through my die cutting machine. Once I had all of my pieces die cut, I'm actually going to take the grass pieces and I'm going to gently hold it down just with like maybe a small smidge of adhesive on the back, just as kind of a placeholder. And then I'm going to use the rectangle infinity die. I'm going to hold that in place, kind of picking and choosing the area I want to die cut. Hold that in place with the purple tape and run that through my die cut machine. Now, because the bottom section it does have 2 layers of cardstock there, and this is textured watercolor paper, it didn't cut through as good, but I could just kind of lightly tug at it, and I can always trim off any edges with some scissors if something didn't cut through very well. And I'm going to repeat those same steps for my pink background and just kind of lightly tug there to release that from the area. So that came out really nice, and then I'll be able to have a white border with this later on. So these are the 2 backgrounds. Absolutely loving how they came out. Then I'm just going to take the tape runner and add the grass directly to those backgrounds. I thought maybe I'd pop them up with foam tape, but decided against it. So I'm glad I kind of left myself that option. So after kind of playing around with the different colored trees and what I liked best, just kind of getting that idea before I actually hold anything down, I need to stamp some sentiments. So I have here these Zen messages. Now there is some sentiments on the My Monthly Hero stamp set, but I love this Zen messages stamp set. It has some great calming messages, which is what I think I really want to send out right now. So I kind of placed that into my Misty, lined up where I wanted the sentiment to go. Prepped that with the anti-static powder tool, and then stamping this with some embossing ink. Now this is another ink cube square that I had gotten out of a previous My Monthly Hero kit, so I like to kind of try and use any of those little things, and it was easier to use the mini ink cube than it was the full-size pad. So after sprinkling on some white embossing powder and heat setting that, I'm just taking my liquid glue and starting to attach my tree so I can start working on putting this card together. And I just love that vibrant sky that I created in the background. That white embossing powder just really pops off of that. So I'm going to attach this to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white card base. I lined the back of my panel with some foam tape, and then I'm just going to line that up on that card front so it leaves this really nice white border around the edge. I'm going to repeat those same steps for my second background here, just using the liquid glue to attach the tree. I'll line the back of this panel with the foam tape and attach it to a white background. Now because my background here is textured, I couldn't quite stamp on that, so I needed to create a sentiment, and I did go ahead and do that off screen. All I had done was heat emboss a sentiment off of the Zen Messages stamp set. I did that with white embossing powder on black cardstock and then just trimmed the sentiment down to a thin strip. And I'm adding black foam squares to the back of that. And I like to bring in my T-square ruler to help align that straight on the front of my card. So that finishes off that card. Now I did have some extra pieces here, some extra trees, and I thought this would make a great, clean, and simple card. And I just love these trees. So I'm using actually a sentiment off of the My Monthly Hero stamp set. And I just stamped that in black ink right onto a piece of the Dove White cardstock, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then just adding both of those trees. I thought about adding the grass, but I thought this was just really nice and clean and simple. So here are the cards that I created in the video. Here is a quick look at that textured background. Like I said, in person, it is beautiful. There's the card I created, and I do have one more that I had done previously with the pink tree. So I hope you enjoyed this video today and it gave you some inspiration. If you have any of the Heroscapes or any other layering stamp set, I hope this inspired you to create and have fun with creating backgrounds. All of the supplies will be listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.